Well, hello, single mamas. Welcome back to our podcast. And today we have Pamela Beaudry, who has her master's degree in social work. And she's a licensed graduate social worker who's currently working in the schools, but she's also worked with foster care. So, welcome, Pamela. I'm glad to have you here today.
Hi, it's great to be here today.
We want to talk today about mental health with your kids, and we know how it affects you, but right now, just recognizing it in your children and what you can do to help them recognize, if where your child is at, if they're having difficulties. And Pamela has a lot of things that she can help you with that, and she has resources, and we're just excited to have you here today, Pamela. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're doing to begin with, and then how parents can begin to recognize the mental health of their children where they're at.
Yeah, hi, it's great to be here. So, I work currently in two different elementary schools as a school social worker, and I have previously worked in with foster care. We've been a licensed foster parents for 4 years, and so I have experience as a parent of three biological children. We fostered seven other children, aging in range from uh, 6 to 16, and then just my experience professionally.
Well, great, thank you. Why don't you help the moms a little bit with, the shutting down of schools and masking and kids not being in the social structure that they've been in years past, and how this is affecting kids, and how you can tell if your children really need help, or what you can do to just kind of help them through some of these ups and downs that they're going through right now with life as crazy as it is.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting couple of years.
It's
And I think we as adults kind of sometimes try to project our feelings on what's happening onto our kids. And our kids are generally very resilient, but there are a lot of things that have been hard on children and disruptive to their routines, to their schedules. Some things that we think about, doing distance learning or hybrid learning. And now most children are back in full time in person learning in schools. One thing I encountered last week was a student who had done distance learning last year and is back in school this year, and all of their friends had moved on into new relationships, and so this child is struggling to get plugged in. So there's been a lot of transition and a lot of changes for children, and not all of them have been negative things. Many children have gotten to spend a lot more time with their parents than they previously had. However, if that's not possible for you as a parent to spend more time with your children, a lot of children have had a lot more independent time at home, a lot more time on devices, and trying to re-engage has been difficult. So there's just a lot of pieces at play, and each family has weathered through the pandemic differently, and each child has had a different experience throughout the pandemic as well. So one of the things to think about is, what has the last 18 months been like for my child? Not for you as a parent, but from the perspective, take a minute and just think about the perspective of your child, whether that's a toddler, preschooler, elementary, middle school, high school. Think about what it has been like through them. What developmental milestones have been affected? Um, what social interactions have changed, and all of those things. And just try to think about what it has been like for your kids. And I feel like that'll give you a good basis of where to start in helping to address some of these mental health concerns in your children.
Okay. Because I know some kids are just, I would almost call it a slump. It's not like they're in a depression or anything, but they don't know which way to go, like you said, to get new friends again and to get back into routines of school, and even just getting up at a certain time and all of those kinds of things. But what can you suggest for moms where they can see that their kids are struggling, and it may not be big major struggle. We can tackle that later, but they're just kind of struggling and adjusting to all these changes. What can a parent do to help them?
Yeah, first off, I want to say that's a really normal thing for your child to be going through. There's actually something called an adjustment disorder, and it's not a depressive disorder. It actually falls under PTSD disorders, but it's not PTSD. It's just how is this child responding to all the changes that have happened? And so, some children it has been more difficult, and I think as parents, first have conversations with your kids about their feelings. And it's really important when you have those conversations to not be dismissive of your child's feelings. So if your child says that they're sad or frustrated or angry, don't come back with, but look at all the good things in your life. Take a minute and say, why are you feeling this way? And make your home a safe place for your kids to have conversations about the way that they're feeling, whether it's because they broke their favorite toy or they've had more disappointments from their their father or some other people in their life. It's important to have these conversations so that your children feel like you are a safe person to go to talk about this. I think it's also important to try to find things that your children enjoy. What does your child like? At this point, some families are still being very cautious and COVID conscious, and some families have returned to life as normal. But find out what it is that your child enjoys. Also, try to think about it might not be the same thing it used to be.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of developmental stages happen in a year and a half
yeah.
to almost 2 years. And so what you think they might be excited about might not be what they used to be excited about. And that's okay. The key is that they're engaged in life and find things that they're interested in.
Well, that's really good advice because kids do change. And sometimes, even with all of the commotion and chaos we've had in the last year and a half to 2 years, they go into another stage and we're still in this stage back here and we haven't caught up to them yet. So that's with any normal living and probably multiplied now because of all that's happened. And we kind of lost a year. A lot of us have lost a year. And so that's great advice. So conversation, first of all, have with them. I love that. And then what do they enjoy? Anything else that you suggest?
I think it really depends on what comes out from those conversations that you're having,
Yeah.
or if your child is really just disengaged when you try to have that conversation, you might have to find a different approach. Some children do well with a sit down. Lots of tough parenting conversations happen best side to side or while in a car where the child doesn't feel like they're on the spot to answer, but they're just kind of passing the time and having a more natural, less pressured conversation can help.
Okay, that's a good idea. Don't just sit down and say, we're going to have a talk now.
I know as a child, that was like the scariest moment of my life.
Sure. What other ideas do you have, Pamela, that can help parents connect with their kids and find out where they're at in their mental health?
Yeah, I think another great idea is just connecting with your child, taking a break. I know we're in a digital age and it's hard as parents to put down our phones. It's hard as there's so many distractions around us that it's hard to focus. It's hard to have these conversations and connect with our children. And our children can't be connecting with us if we're busy connecting with Instagram and Facebook and all of these other things. It's really hard for our children to really feel that connection with us. And it can be simple, it doesn't have to be all day, every day, but building that connection between yourself and your children and doing something that they enjoy together.
Yeah.
So sometimes your kids might be at an age where they like board games or they like to go for walks or different things like that. That comes back to knowing what your children enjoy or asking them what they enjoy, but then actually doing something with them is a really important thing that we can do to connect with our kids and really get a feel of how they're doing and to make this a routine in your family So whether that's in the car having conversations or going for walks after dinner or playing board games, these are the times when you can ask those questions and really get to know, who are my friends at school or my children's friends at school? Or if they don't have any friends at school, do they have friends in other places that they go?
Mm.
And really finding out what's happening in your children's life beyond, do you have homework, time to go to practice, and those types of conversations.
That's really good. And, they don't have to be long, dragged out things. They can be simple, fun. It could be as easy as sitting down and coloring with your child if they like to color, or maybe do a craft with them or cook something with them. But that's where natural conversations take place a lot, I think. It doesn't have to be a regularly scheduled event. And as long as it's something they enjoy, I think that's when they really tend to open up. Great ideas.
I think it's also important to ask open-ended questions. So if your children go to school, who did you play with at recess today? Or who did you eat lunch with today? And those are really important questions to gain, who are the important relationships that my children have outside of our home.
That's really good. So what if they don't have any friends? What can you do? Is there anything you can do if they're like, I don't have any friends?
Some of like lots of children feel like they don't.
I lost all my friends. Like you said in the beginning, they've all got new friends. What can they do?
Yeah, I think a lot of children feel that way. There are different strategies. Some of it is like coaching your children on how to make friends, how to connect with people. Something we forget about with COVID is, if your child is in third grade, their last regular school year was kindergarten. Think about all the social developmental things that they have missed. So we at the school I work at have second graders who have never learned how to stand in line. They have never had to put their boots and jackets on for recess by themselves. It's all of these things that we don't think about. Children haven't made friends. It's not something they've done for younger kids. And so helping them understand, how do you make friends? How are you a good friend to other people that makes them want to be a good friend to you? And kind of working through those things. I think with older children too, they're going through a lot more things. They're going through puberty. They're going through, really coming into who they are and their identity and all of those things. And it can be a big challenge. And I think use the resources that you have. A lot of schools have school counselors, school-based therapists, and school social workers, that if you reach out to the school and say, hey, my kid is struggling, they haven't been able to make a friend, use the resources that you have at your children's school to help kind of be able to build those relationships and help your children with connection. I know with one of our children, we had this issue and we reached out to the classroom teacher, and she was able to kind of pair our child with another student in the class. So now they have a connection, and the other child is enjoying this relationship and our child is enjoying this relationship, but we had to reach out and ask for help, and that's okay.
That's good. And that's good to realize that a lot of times we're afraid to ask for help, or we don't want to be a bother, or we don't want to take the time, or we don't know that the school has the resources. Schools have changed and they have a lot of resources that they didn't used to have. And to utilize those is awesome.
Yeah, and your child is not the only child that will say they don't have friends. I We have almost a third of the students in one of my school are currently in groups to help build and foster these relationships.
Oh, that's amazing to think about that, because we look at our kids and we think, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? What have I done that they don't have any friends? And it's life right now. And to hear a third of the school where you are, they're in groups for that. There are a number of things that we can do to find new resources and reach out for help. And on our website, we always list resources too. I don't know if you have any books or websites that you would want to suggest, but if you send those to me, we'll list those on our website, which is singlemamas.org, or our Facebook page. We'll put things there as well. We have Single Mamas Ministry Facebook page. And these are places where we want these things and where you can ask questions. So don't be afraid. If you don't see any questions, go ahead and start questions, because we have people there that will answer. And like Pamela is here, and if you have questions, she'll be able to go on there and answer some of these, or at least attempt to answer some of them for you. What else do you have for us? Any other suggestions you have?
Yeah, as far as this portion of mental health, I think it's important. I think another thing to think about is including your co-parent. Some people have really great co-parent situations, and some people don't. So I've found that it's important to make sure when you're having these conversations, especially if you might not have the healthiest dynamic with your co-parent, is to really bring forth like some evidence-based research and reasoning for why you think this is important for your child and how you can work together for the benefit of your child. I think it's very important. And sometimes you can utilize like the school staff to help navigate these conversations. I know that's something I've been pulled into, is to kind of mediate a little bit between parents who maybe one sees a real serious issue and the other one doesn't have any concerns. And so it's good to include other people and a third party sometime if the conversation between the two of you is not going well. Another thing, one of my favorite books is The Whole Brain Child. It is a fantastic book. There's like a book study you can actually do with it if you want to get a group of your mama friends together and go through The Whole Brain Child. It's all evidence based and it's a very easy read. So if you don't have a PhD in psychology, you're going to be fine. It even has pictures and infographics. So it's a great book, a great resource for parents to really understand the way your child brains work, how it is developed, and then as a parent, how you can engage and really help your child, because no one is a perfect parent. Nobody knows everything or has all the answers. So as parents, we can learn, educate ourselves, and do the best that we can.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot about that book from a number of people, and having a group get together and do it together as a group would be great, because like you said, we need each other and we become stronger with one another. And as long as we pick friends who are not feeding negativity into our life, but finding those friends that really are working to do the best for their kids and have a good positive outlook on life, there's so much we can do as a group, and as moms getting together. And we're speaking to single moms, but all moms are going through this right now, whether they're single or married or whatever their status may be. So we can work together with this to help our kids navigate through this time of change and loss and confusion, and what's next, and will we be sent back home again, will we be back on our computers, do we wear masks, do we not wear masks? And depending on what part of the country you're in while you're watching this, everybody's in a different place. But our kids, we all love our kids and want to do the best for them. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up? We'd like to do another session, maybe about teens and what we can do with your teenager. But for now, is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
I think I'd like to add that it's important to understand when you really need to utilize outside help, and it's more than just adjusting and changing and all of the things that have happened, and there is something more going on with your child. And so I think it's important to realize if your child has a persistent lack of interest in things that they used to enjoy, if they have a persistent lack of interest kind of in anything, if they just don't want to do anything, big changes to their weight, whether weight loss or weight gain, sleeping all the time, those types of things, that's when it's really important for you as a mom to get that outside help for your child. Um, and and there's so many resources, there's so many ways to get that help, whether it's through a school-based therapist or school social worker or an outside therapy, there's telehealth, there's a lot of really great options. And it's amazing for us as parents to be able to help our kids get these resources in their hands. One thing that is really interesting, I read a study, or actually several studies, about how when we worship and we pray, it actually is beneficial for our mental health. So, functional MRIs have been done that look at a person's brain uh, before prayer and after prayer, and a person who prays daily or does worship daily, and one who doesn't, and actually shows that a lot of really healthy things can come from that aspect of your life of prayer and worship. And so, making your home kind of filled with that attitude of worship and prayer can really change that dynamic as well, because it just kind of does something in your brain. So I think it's important to kind of look at the whole person. So, make sure your child is eating healthy foods, make sure they're engaged in activities, limit screen time, make sure they're getting enough sleep, and then engage them socially, talk to them, like really talk to your kids. And then spiritually, make sure they're um brain like they're having that time where, mindfulness is a really big buzzword right now. Well, prayer and worship are mindfulness activities.
Yeah.
It's important for us to remember that. And then physically, there might be some chemical imbalance in your child's brain, and they might need to go and be on medication, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And they might need to go to therapy, and that's okay. It doesn't change the fact that like what kind of mother you are, it doesn't matter. Lots of people, and like really honestly anybody and everybody can benefit from therapy. So I think it's important to not focus on just the depression, but focus on the whole child and how you can really support them in whatever stage they're in. And if you feel like your child is it's depressed, but it goes beyond that. If they have some suicidal thoughts or ideation, it's really important for you to kind of learn how to handle that and the warning signs of that. So if they're talking about suicide, and then it's really important if your child is talking about suicide and death to see, do they have a plan? Do they have a means to carry out that plan? So do they know how they want to attempt suicide? Do they have a means to do that? And then do they have a specific time or a day that they want to do that? So if the answer to those are yes, you need to seek help.
Yeah.
If they know, but maybe they have a plan, but they don't have means to that plan.
Yeah.
It's important to get help for your child. But if they have means and a plan, it's an emergency situation for your child. And so there's different resources. SAMHSA, SAMHSA is like the National Mental Health Service, as well as most counties or a lot of counties have emergency helplines that you can call. Some have for both children and adults. And so they can send somebody to your house sometimes that can help talk down your child, and then they can make the assessment. So it's not all the pressure on you whether or not to bring your child into the hospital for a mental health stay, but somebody else can make that decision for you, because I think sometimes that can be a hard decision to know what to do as a parent. So there's lots of resources. Find out what's available in your area. I know our family has really benefited from the county crisis hotline and being able to talk to somebody. So those are just some resources if it is, moving to more serious depression. And just because a child is young doesn't mean that they can't be severely depressed.
Yeah.
And there's different types of depression. There's a persistent depressive disorder, which lasts more than 2 years. And then there's a major depressive disorder that can come after 2 weeks. And so making sure your child does not have access to firearms, medication, and those types of things is really important for parents to keep their children safe.
That's really good. We think of it with teenagers, but sadly it's with elementary age children as well. And pre-adolescents, the thoughts and things that can be going through their mind. And we have to be listening as parents to what our kids are saying and not just cast it off or ignore it, but really listen. And if it's repetitive and it's ongoing, we need to take steps, and you've given us some good resources to begin with: the county, your personal doctor can give you recommendations. There's a lot of things that you can do, but don't ignore it. And for the rest of us who are just kind of struggling through with kids going through all the change, like we're going through all the change right now, I think these have been great suggestions. I think they'll really help. You know, some of them we've maybe thought about, but you have to take the time to do it. You have to take time to spend with your kids and listen to your kids and see what they're saying. I like the idea of asking these questions where you need to get answers back about who their friends are, because their friends are important. That's what's going to influence them a lot. So I think these are good. We need to wrap it up. We can do another session, but anything else you want to add before we close this out, Pamela?
No, not today. We can do more later.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And mamas, thank you for joining us, and look for our next session and we'll continue this discussion. Thanks very much. Don't forget to join us at singlemamas.org.